Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome indeed to another edition of the Mark Moses Show podcast, as we're always broadcasting from the Anidjar and Levine Accident Attorney Studios. I know it's about 115 degrees outside with the heat index. This guy's shaking his head. Joins us every Taco Tuesday. He is my great friend, Alan Zlotorzynski with Brevard Sports Network. Alan, how you doing today?
Doing great, Mark, and always a pleasure to be here, my friend. And that's why I'm not at a camp right now. I don't care who's. Listen. I wouldn't care if Patrick Mahomes was playing for the Melbourne Bulldogs today. I wouldn't be at that camp.
Well, I talked with head football coach in Melbourne, Jeff Panucci, this morning, and he's like, "Yeah, we practice at 6:00 in the morning there on the campus of Melbourne High School.
Yeah,
like 6 to 8." I don't blame him. I don't. And I know, look, you played high school football. I don't, maybe not in the state of Florida, but like, dude.
Not in this, brother.
No.
You know, listen, I can tell you that and every coach in this county is phenomenal when it comes to heat safety. I'm looking at the screen now. The FHSAA, and I've even got their hat on today. They have a policy that requires schools to monitor the wet bulb globe temperature, which is a scientific measure that factors temperature, humidity, sun angle, wind speed, and cloud cover to determine heat stress level. When the temperature gets to a certain degree, helmets come off. When the temperature gets to the next level degree, practice is over.
Yeah, some teams practice in the morning, some do in the afternoon. But I know we talked about it last week, but I'm going to reset and ask you again. High school football practices are back. I know you're all over the Brevard Sports Network. How excited are for you, Alan, for this to be back?
Yeah, no, we're pumped. We're ready to go. We're equally as excited. I believe it, a volleyball. I mean, listen, we just put our first volleyball preview up this morning. Listen, we're ready. It has been a strangely, extremely slow summer.
Yes.
And I don't know that I've ever seen it this slow as it pertains to sports news, but it has been.
High school is back. You went over your rankings with me last week, but I want to ask you about Melbourne football. Okay. Coming off a year where, and honestly, over the last couple of years, they constantly keep changing head coaches. Panucci's been there forever. He told me this morning, hey, he went to school there. He's been a coordinator there, assistant coach. I think he's going to do a great job there. I'm excited for him. But what does he need to do, Alan? I'm putting you on the spot to help Melbourne get to that next level where they're a winning football team.
Well, I think he's accomplished the first part of that, and that is to establish a culture, whatever it is, whether it's, Melbourne football culture or whether it's something else. But it is, listen, if you cut Jeff Panucci open, he's going to bleed green. He's a bulldog through and through. Just like Anthony Knockreiner, he's a 2007, I believe, graduate of Melbourne High School. Panucci was a great football player for them. And now he has surrounded himself with a staff of coaches. I believe 90% of them either played there, went there. So his staff knows the culture. So they do that, and in return, what you do, and listen, Mark, I think the thing, I put up a post yesterday about transfers and who is playing where, and it sparked a great debate in this community about transfers, high school football transfers. And I think the one comment I didn't see in all of the 60-plus comments that were on this post were, coaching matters in keeping your players. And Panucci has taken the first step in doing that by establishing that Melbourne culture, by being a Melbourne guy. Jeff is going to keep the Melbourne players home. They aren't going to skirt off to Bayside or Palm Bay or O'Galley or Cocoa. Now, he'll lose a player here and there, but he'll also get a player here and there. It'll be nothing like it was, say, 4 years ago when Melbourne lost like 8, 9, 10 really good players. That's not going to happen with a guy like Jeff Panucci at Melbourne because he breeds and bleeds the culture.
Very well said. We're here, the Alan Zlotorzynski Brevard Sports Network. Okay, so about an hour ago, I also got to talk with the head football coach at O'Galley, right, Mr. Coach Sands, who's excited for his team. And it's interesting, and I know you just talked about this in another post. He's very adamant about, hey, we have to schedule harder. We got to beat those teams in South Florida. We got to do this. They were right there. They were so close to getting to a state championship. Do you feel like if you're going to take that next level, you do need to schedule harder if you're one of these teams?
I've got a couple different schools of thought on this. The three hardest schedules in the county this year in terms of, strength of schedule from last year's opponents are Heritage, Cocoa, and O'Galley. Those are the three teams that play the toughest schedules this season. You look at O'Galley's schedule, and it is as mean and nasty as it comes, my friend. So I think what Chris Sands saw from his football team last year in that Final Four game against Miami Northwestern was, we are a really, really good football team. Obviously, they're in the Final Four, right? But he was not satisfied with the end result of that football. I mean, they got blown out, right? I mean, Miami Northwestern, and it's not just O'Galley. Miami Northwestern took care of business against everybody. I mean, that was Teddy Bridgewater's team last year.
Yeah.
So, Chris Sands took a look at that and he said, you know what? Yeah, we've got to schedule tougher. I've got to expose my team to competition like that during the course of the season. He plays a game late in the year against the team, Atlantic Delray Beach. They were 11-2 last year. That's on the 24th. Look, they play a very tough Trinity Catholic team who was a state runner-up 2 years ago. They play Cocoa. They play the First Academy. They play Vero Beach. Their kickoff classic is against Plantation. So he has done that. The other school of thought here is you want to stay healthy. You want to make sure that you have the depth to play these teams and remain healthy enough to be successful in the playoffs. And that's the other thing that O'Galley has taken care of this offseason. They return a phenomenal core of players. Now, look, they graduated a lot, okay? I mean, let's not sugarcoat this. I talked to Chris Sands over the spring game. When you lose like your top 3 to 5 leading tacklers, your leading running backs, when you lose those guys, they're tough to replace at the high school level the next year. But O'Galley has done it. And not only have they done it, but they've got some transfers in that could be just as good or better than the guys they're replacing. So he's got the depth. The biggest question mark for O'Galley and playing a schedule like that this year is going to be how fast can they get the defense, which is where they lost most of the, graduated players, up to par. And based on their coaching staff, I'd say they can do it quickly.
All right. So I want to say this one more time. Your top 3 hardest schedules, strength of schedule. What were the 3?
It's Heritage, Cocoa, and O'Galley, and just in that order. Heritage plays the toughest strength of schedule in the county. And they did it last year too. And they started 1-4. And then they finished 4-0 and they made the playoffs. They won their district.
Did Heritage I'll use the term, did Heritage want the smoke? Like, yeah, we want to take on this schedule as well.
Yeah, listen, Michael Benson is a former American. He's the all-time leading rusher in the Arena Football League. Benson played I want to say either Bethune-Cookman or FAMU. I think it was FAMU. He played at FAMU. Professional football player. A guy like that knows what gets teams better, right? So he's gone out, and I think he's got O'Galley and Cocoa on his schedule this year. So amongst other teams. So he knows iron sharpens iron. My feeling is it may have backfired a little bit on him last year, but did it really though? Because they ended up winning their district. They made the playoffs. So I don't know. We'll see what happens this year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay, so tell us about your coverage then, Alan, over the next couple weeks here, going to the Kickoff Classic in August.
Well, each day on Brevard Sports Network, we'll kick out two team previews. And listen, I'm going to be honest, man. Until it gets a little cooler, I'm not going to be standing in the middle of a football field.
That's okay, man. Look, I was outside yesterday for about 10 minutes. I'm like, nope, got to go.
I'm 50. I'm 55 years old. Takes me a little longer to get across the field these days. Other than that, I'm in pretty decent shape. But I'm not going to go out there and wear myself out before the Kickoff Classic. We will have the best coverage of anybody in this county leading up to the Kickoff Classics. I promise you that.
Look at you. Big words. I like it. We're the Alan Zlotorzynski Brevard Sports Network. All right. As a former quarterback, all right, we're going to go back in time here. So, how long did it take you in camp where you started to feel comfortable? Like, okay, I'm ready for the season. Like, did you ever think that way as an athlete for football going through that fall camp?
In my junior and senior seasons, I was ready right away. You go into camp ready. You better go into camp ready. As a sophomore, not so much. Scared, don't know what's going to happen. I didn't start until the final half of my junior season, and then I started my entire senior season. But you go into camp ready. Listen, these student athletes, especially today, with what's at stake, right? With NIL money, scholarship money, stuff like that on the table. These kids prepare like they're headed to NFL training camp. The 7-on-7s, the off-season workout camps, the personal coaches. High school football is what college football was 20 years ago, and I'm telling you, Mark, these kids are more than ready to step on the field day one, ready to go.
All right, here's the follow-up then. You bring up 7-on-7. I'm going to put you on the spot. Okay, sure. And then you give the answer and I'll give my answer. Do you think these 7-on-7 tournaments, and you've covered them, do you think this is good for the state of football, high school football? Do you think like this is good right now, what we're doing with all these 7-on-7s?
There are several things in my old age I've come around on. Transfers, I think kids should have the right to go where they want these days because of what's on the line at the next level. If you play for one school and that school can't get you to college, then that kid has every right to go somewhere that can, okay? I just believe that. I hated 7-on-7 a couple of years ago. Hated it. But I've seen enough to know enough now that 7-on-7 has really helped high school football, the rhythm of the offense, these quarterbacks, these receivers. These kids are catching and throwing footballs 24/7, 365 now. And how can that not help? Yes, does it hurt? Are all high school football coaches in favor of it? No. Does it throw off some timing? Yes. But for the most part, Mark, 7-on-7 is just another way to practice the skill and the art of catching and throwing, which 20 years ago in high school football was a rarity. You didn't see 4 and 5 wide sets in high school football. For God's sakes, I ran a Delaware freaking wing tee, and we may have thrown the football 15 times a game, right? That would be a record back then.
Does it also help branding for the players to get their name out there?
Well, that's the biggest part, Mark. The 7-on-7 is the branding. That is the thing. These tournaments are, my good buddy Lee Latner runs 7-on-7 Elite. Caleb works for them part-time in the winter. He travels all over the state of Florida doing these tournaments. They're big time. If they weren't big time, guys like Cam Newton wouldn't spend $500,000 a year on them.
It's a great point. It is. But those are done. Now we're in high school football mode where they're at practice here. Yeah. I'll give you the shout out. What teams are you guys going to be broadcasting this year in high school football?
Cocoa, MCC, Heritage, and I always leave one out. Cocoa, Heritage, MCC, and there's 4. Coco,
You're right.
Heritage,
Look, he's getting ready.
MCC.
No, you're right, man.
There's 4 of them. We got 4
right.
of them this year.
So you're gonna have Coco versus O'Galley on Brevard Sports Network then, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it doesn't belong anywhere else.
Oh man. All right, is that game?
Sorry, I don't mean to sound like an ass.
No, you're right, man. No, dude, that game is going to be gigantic. Just whoever wins, I'm just excited for the county. And I know it's the end of July here, but you think of, and I feel like we've lost this in this county because of these new scheduling you have to do. I like the 2 heavyweights in the county are going to go at it. I think that makes it exciting for everyone.
Yeah, listen, it's going to be great. September 19th, so it's not like we have to wait all the way till October for this. September 19th, and we'll have a pretty good measuring stick too, Mark, as to what we can expect in that game, because they both will have played Vero Beach by the time they get together. O'Galley plays them in week 1. Coco plays them in week 3. So we will have had a pretty good idea of what we can expect to see on September 19th. That'll give us a sample of what we can expect.
Yeah, that is going to be exciting. So you were saying this earlier, Alan. So volleyball, that's also starting up?
Man, volleyball's terrific, man. It has really become one of those sports that are, I asked Jackson's going off to the University of Florida this year, so he won't be with us. And I asked Jackson, what was the one thing that happened to him that he never thought would happen? And he said, I became a huge volleyball fan. The competition, our county is so good. We've got a battlefield of teams out there. Of course, we've got the greats like Merritt Island and Coach Angie Patrick, right? I mean, Coach Patrick, with 21 more wins this year, will hit career win 500. We've got, Coach Sarah over at Vieira, Coach Nicole down at Bayside, Coach Darren at Satellite, Diego up at Ash. We have got a plethora of outstanding, talented coaches in this county that not only do a terrific job coaching high school volleyball, but volleyball is the fastest growing sport, college sport. Beach volleyball is. We've got beach volleyball and club volleyball. Just like football, volleyball has become a 12-month, 365-day-a-year sport. And these girls, Mark, they can go to college on beach volleyball scholarships. They can go to college on indoor volleyball scholarships. So it opens a world of opportunity for them.
That's a great point. So school's going to start up here. I feel bad saying that to the kids. I know today's July 29th. School's right around the corner, buddy. And then all these games are going to start. I know. It's going to be nuts. All right. That's high school sports. Let's recap what happened last week. So I feel bad saying this. I didn't want it to happen. So you came on with me last Tuesday when Ozzy Osbourne passed away. And I thought you did a phenomenal job talking about it with me and how you're an 80s heavy metal guy. Then Thursday, the immortal Hulk Hogan passed away, 71 years old. I know you saw Hulk Hogan in person. I know you watch wrestling. As a sports guy, what are your thoughts of the passing of Hulk Hogan?
Mark, I thought you texted me a message last week and I actually used it in my Facebook post, that I thought was very well about Hulk Hogan. This was a guy that had a complicated legacy, but an iconic career. And yes, I've seen Hulk Hogan more times than I can count. Listen, at 14 years old, my mother allowed me to go to the Baltimore Arena to buy a ticket to watch WrestleMania 1 on closed circuit television, WrestleMania 2 for that matter, on closed circuit television. And I am the guy, I am from that generation where Hulk Hogan blew onto the scene. I can remember sitting in the movie theater watching Thunder Lips throw Rocky over the ropes, right? I can remember seeing Hulk Hogan on the Johnny Carson show introducing Hulkamania. I can remember the MTV and the WWF at that time rock and wrestling thing that really catapulted wrestling into the entertainment spectrum it became. and Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper and Cyndi Lauper and all of those people were a part of that generation. So it stung a little bit to hear of Hulk Hogan's passing. And I think what really got me, in fact, I wouldn't say teared up, but I would say what got me a little emotional was watching Ric Flair on TMZ discuss his friendship with Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, I don't care whether you were a wrestling fan or not, you knew Hulk Hogan. And across any spectrum of life, in any genre of music or entertainment, if you know somebody, but you don't know anything about what it is they really do, that's an iconic individual, right? Yeah. I mean, can you name a Liberace song? No, but you know who Liberace is, right? Who also, by the way, was at WrestleMania 1. So, you know.
That's a great trivia question.
Right. You know, I mean, people forget. You go back to WrestleMania 1, the ring announcer was Billy Martin from the New York Yankees. The referee outside the ring for the Orndorff, Piper, Hogan team match was Muhammad Ali, right? You had the Rockettes there, Liberace, Cyndi Lauper. I mean, it was unbelievable what Vince McMahon did to introduce this event. He mortgaged everything for this. But Hulk Hogan was the center of it all. And he remained the center of it all. Even when Hulk Hogan would lose his title and he would stand in the ring like he did with the Ultimate Warrior and raise his hand, right? The people loved it. They loved him, you know? And I think, you know, Hogan had two unbelievable, iconic runs in this business because you never thought you would hear from Hulk Hogan again you know, during the Monday Night Wars. But here he comes up in Daytona Beach, right? Down the ring with Hall and Nash. And he's the bad guy, right? And there began one of the most iconic runs in the history of wrestling with NWO. Does NWO survive as long as it did without Hulk Hogan?
No.
Does professional wrestling, is it where it is today without Hulk Hogan?
Okay. All right. I heard this question the other day, and that was very well said, Alan. Does WWF and wrestling get big in the 80s if it's not Hulk Hogan and it's another, like it's, and I love Macho, if Macho Man's the centerpiece, does it get as big? I say no.
No. Because Hulk Hogan understood the one thing that got, and you can watch documentaries on these guys. Hulk Hogan understood the one thing that those guys didn't get, and that was that it wasn't about them. It was about everybody else. Now, Hogan may have been egotistical and, you know, the 24-inch pythons, but Hogan understood that if everybody was going to make the money that they could make in this sport, it had to be about the people buying the tickets, didn't it? You know, eat your vitamins, do your exercises, get good grades, Hulkamania. And I mean, it all set up so beautifully for Hulk, beating the Iron Sheik for his first ever WWF title, right? I mean, people hated Iran and Russia back then, hated them. And I mean, so Hogan sold all of that so well. I had a Hulkamania t-shirt, you know, I mean, Hogan was, I would say this, when it comes to sports and entertainment, and I don't mean sports and entertainment wrestling, I just mean sports and entertainment over the last 50 years. If Hulk Hogan is not in the top 5, he's certainly in the top 10 in terms of iconic figures.
I agree. Pop culture.
Yep.
He's so gigantic. He is.
Yep.
All right, I said this in the moment. I want your rankings, Alan. All right. He has two of the most famous moments in the history of professional wrestling. As we all know, body slamming Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3. But I think him turning into a bad guy is probably the most important moment in the history of wrestling.
To make you understand how hard that was for him. Eric, if I've read all the books I've read the Monday Night War book, which is listen to it. It's a phenomenal book. These books about those Monday Night Wars are great. And the one thing that every book about wrestling had in common about that particular incident was nobody was certain Hogan was going to show up to do that, because they just didn't know whether Hulk Hogan could really turn into a bad guy. They just didn't know. And he shows up. In fact, Bischoff tried to sell him on this, and Hogan told him to get the hell out the first time he tried to sell him on it. Hogan's like, are you crazy? I will never be a bad guy and return heel. But he did it. And the reason he did it, and I love the explanation, is he really took a step back and looked at what was best for the sport at the time. And it was failing, right? The WWE, he had the Attitude Era a little bit. It was things were just kind of little plateau, right? You had 2 or 3 guys in The Rock and Stone Cold. He said, I did it for the sport. I thought it would really shake things up. And it did, brother. It totally did. And God bless him, because it wasn't an easy thing for him to do.
I like you threw a brother in there as well in honor of Hulk Hogan. When you said that, I like that, Alan. It's. I was telling this to my dad the other day on the phone. It's just all types of fiction. There's the good guy and there's the bad guy. And you look at an old West. I'm sorry, my mic went out. You look at an old Western. The guy with the black hat is the bad guy, right? But that created this idea of the bad guy is the anti-hero. People are cheering for the bad guy. You never saw that before, right?
No, you didn't. You absolutely didn't. And wrestling was the only place where you could get that.
Yes. So
right?
Stone Cold, here's what's funny. Like Stone Cold Steve Austin is a bad guy.
Right.
He's running around, doing the middle finger, punching people out. But there was something sexy where, and Vince McMahon, give him credit. He's like, I'm going to be the evil boss. And you're going to live that fantasy through Stone Cold where you're going to flip the bird to your boss and you're going to punch him out. But he's a bad guy, Stone Cold.
When I was coming up, right, the debate was always who's better, Flair or Hogan? Flair or Hogan? Flair or Hogan? That was the talk, right? Who's the best, Flair or Hogan? Flair or Hogan? Flair or Hogan? And of course, you had guys that were WCW fans and you had guys that were WWF fans. I was kind of in both corners. Listen, if the Jim Crockett Memorial was coming to the Baltimore Arena, I was buying tickets to go see it. I wanted to see Ric Flair. I wanted to see, I don't know why I can't remember. Oh, the Road Warriors. I wanted to see those guys, right? So I didn't care. I always looked at it like this. My argument, even back then, was Ric Flair was always a better wrestler. Ric Flair was always a better athlete. Ric Flair was always a better showman. But I always felt like Ric Flair never had the one thing that Hulk Hogan did, and that was he didn't have his body, he didn't have that aura that Hulk Hogan has.
This goes back to why it worked. And I said this last week when it happened in real time when he passed away. I'm going to say it to you, and I want to get your thoughts. Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan did something that was brilliant. They marketed the product to children and kids for the merchandise. Hulk Hogan's larger than life. He was a superhero, an action star, and kids bought the action figures and the toys and the video games. That's what made it work.
Well, and that's why MTV was so crucial to WWF when they kicked off. And I say WWF because that's what they were then. Was so crucial. I can't highlight enough how important MTV was to that and the growth of that. Because when you looked into a WWF audience, it was the MTV crowd. And see, Vince and Hulk, they knew this, right? They knew this. And so they allowed for the partnership. And then once that wore off, then it was about the character building, the Friday nights, Miss Elizabeth and Randy Savage, right? I mean, then you had established yourself enough to make it about the characters. Jake the Snake Roberts pulling that big ass python out of the bag, the honky tonk man, These are the types of characters. And there were, if you had 20,000 people in an arena, somebody was latching on to one of those characters. Big John Studd, The Undertaker. I'll never forget when The Undertaker first started in the WWE. It was a big deal. Roddy Piper, that's Piper's Pit. You know what I mean? Those were the days. But again, Mark, the center of it all was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. It's funny. Wrestling goes through cycles where it's super popular and it crosses that barrier into mainstream pop culture. Then it kind of goes away. Then it comes back. Because I remember being a kid when Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man, that was a big deal in the 80s. Then it kind of fizzled. Then when I was in high school, the Monday Night Wars happened and it got hot. Then it kind of died again. It's interesting how this works with wrestling.
How many sports do you know can survive federal indictments, people going to jail?
Yeah.
Like the way the WWF, Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan did with that steroid scandal. Not many, brother.
I like what you said at the top about, his complicated legacy, but you said it so poetically. What was your line again? Can you do it?
Listen, Hulk Hogan led he had a complicated legacy because when the racist remarks and the sex tapes, when that stuff came out, growing up a Hulkamaniac, I was disappointed in Hulk.
I've said this. I've been on record as saying this. I used to be a gigantic supporter of Lance Armstrong, and I always stood up for Lance Armstrong. And when it turned out that he might have been putting stuff in his body and he's like cheating that way, I was devastated. Devastated by that.
I won't say I was I was pissed. And I was like, you know what? And the things that he said and the things that he did in a lot of people's eyes ruined his entire career. Maybe in a lot of people's eyes it did. But let me just reiterate and repeat the comment you asked me to repeat. Hulk Hogan had a complicated legacy, but you can never deny the fact he's one of the most iconic figures.
I agree.
Ever.
He's the Babe Ruth, Michael Jordan of wrestling. I'm sorry. And there's so many great wrestlers I love. I really do. Hulk Hogan's at the top.
I can even take you back. I've seen now, everybody knows how old I am, but as a kid, I went to the Baltimore Arena with my dad and my uncle, and I saw Bob Backlund wrestle as a champ. I saw Bruno Sammartino wrestle as a champ. Okay.
You were young when this happened.
Well, Backlund, not so much. I was 10, 11, 12 when Backlund was the champ. I remember when the Iron Sheik beat Bob Backlund to win the championship, put him in the camel clutch in the middle of the ring at Madison Square Garden, and Arnold Skoland threw in the towel. I remember all that, right? So, but not, and that was the thing. I remember how Bruno Sammartino used to talk on the microphone. I remember how Bob Backlund used to talk on the microphone during promos. And then when Hulk Hogan came and he talked into the microphone, it was like nothing anybody had ever heard before.
Great point. I make the joke. I used to watch Suburban Commando with Hulk Hogan over and over again. And he was in there's another one where he was like a nanny. Like he had some corny movies, but they're like, No Holds Barred. My buddy Jason loves that movie. What was the terrible TV show, The Thunder Beach or whatever?
Thunder Beach or something where
bad. You're right. Rocky 3 is so famous.
Somebody asked me this. What do you think if you had to pick out his two greatest moments of his career, whether it be a WrestleMania match? If you can only pick two, what would they be?
Well, personally, and this won't be on my top two, I love when he's on Baywatch with Ric Flair and Macho Man. It makes me laugh. It makes me laugh every single time. Whenever I'm kind of down, life kind of sucks, I put that episode on. I just start laughing. I can't. It's so funny. It's got to be. WrestleMania 3 with Andre the Giant. That's what they were saying that on Fox News when he died, like how iconic that is. And I think NWO. I think it's just so iconic. What are your two then?
Well, yeah, no, those are it. When he goes bad guy and, WrestleMania 3. But I'll tell you, man, I watched the other day probably the one match that a lot of people may forget about, and that I think is WrestleMania 18 when he fought The Rock. Remember that?
Yeah, the crowd. Here's what's funny. So Hogan is supposed to be the bad guy
in
this match. The Toronto, it's at the Sky Dome.
Right.
They don't give a bleep.
No.
You're rooting for Hulk Hogan. So The Rock. So I listened to Jim Ross, who's my favorite announcer of all time. He said we had to switch on the fly with Jerry the King.
They did.
They had to switch. I heard him say this on Busted Open Radio the day when Hogan died. They had to switch the whole script because the whole crowd is going crazy for Hogan the whole time. It is an amazing match.
It is. And I feel the good and the bad, privileged. I didn't, again, I didn't like the racist things or the sex tapes or any of that stuff, but I do feel I saw his career in its entirety, and I was a little sad when he passed.
I was sad as well. When I close my eyes and I think of Hulk Hogan, I think of him being interviewed by Mean Gene Okerlund. And that and I used, it's funny.
Okerlund.
I know you're going to say the same thing. I would I would think I should be a broadcaster and I'd interview the wrestlers. Yeah. That's I want to be like Mean Gene.
I always thought that's where you should. I always thought you should try. Hell, you're better than Michael Cole, brother.
You think dude, wrestling is so hard. I can't stress this enough. You have to be in top physical shape. They are looking you can't be like, oh, they judged me on my body. It's all judged on your body. If you're a man or a woman, you have to be in top physical shape. You're constantly going to get injured. You have to understand how to not injure your opponent. You have to have great mic skills. It is once in a generation.
It's funny you say that because I remember I was at a party for the Hell in a Cell match, and of course between Undertaker and Mankind, and everybody in that room, most of the people in that room were like, "Oh man, this, what are we watching this for?" Right? And when Undertaker threw Mankind off the top of that freaking cage,
Hell in a Cell, baby,
and onto that table, the entire room, even the non-believers. Look, we all know wrestling is an entertainment; it's got a script, but everybody just kind of looked at each other in that room that day, and the non-believers became believers because there's only so many ways you can land on your back from 25 feet in the air.
And he continued the match.
Right.
After that, he did.
Right.
We've both been to wrestling matches. I have been to tapings where there is an injury and they put up the X. So you do like this.
Yeah, I have too.
And they stop okay, hold on. This is for real now. And they have to stop everything. It is very dangerous.
It's funny. I think I watched some of these wrestling biographies. I can remember back, and I don't know if they do it anymore, but I used to go to wrestling matches at the Baltimore Civic Center where the matches would start at 5:00 in the afternoon. But the ones that they did from 5 to 7 were TV tapings, right? So you went, and everybody that was there for the 5:00 matches all got moved down. And then by the time the first bell, and then 7:00, it would stop. And then they would move everybody back to their normal seats. And then the regular card would start that night. But yeah, man, it is definitely the end of an era with Hulk Hogan.
It's funny. He hasn't wrestled in 20 years, but
no, he hasn't.
That's what's sad. It is. And I don't know if anyone will be that famous. I mean, you have John Cena now, who's in a bunch of movies and TV shows, but he's not Hulk Hogan. He's not.
Neither is The Rock. Neither was Steve Austin. And the other thing too, Mark, is none of these guys are going to do it for as long and as successfully as Hogan did.
No. All right. Wait, before I let you go, did you see Hogan wrestle in person?
Oh yeah, I've seen Hogan wrestle in person more times than I can count. Listen, I think the thing that people don't understand is, as a kid growing up, we went every month to the wrestling matches, and when I became a teenager, we went every month to the wrestling matches. And in order for those arenas to sell out, those guys wrestled 350 days a year. They did. Okay. And so every month, Hulk Hogan would fight on the card. He just did. I mean, that's the way it was. If he didn't fight on the card, then it was Andre the Giant or another big time superstar as the main event. But the one thing that never happened in Baltimore, except for one time, the title never changed hands, right? It never changed hands. Okay. Oh. The one time it did, I still believe to this day was a mistake. It was an intercontinental match between Greg the Hammer Valentine, who was the champion, and Tito Santana. And they were in a steel cage, and me and my buddies were sitting about 6 rows back, right? And they're beating the hell out of each other. And Greg the Hammer Valentine, I don't know, somehow a chair or something got in the ring, and Valentine hits Santana with it, and the door kicks open, and he's going out, right? I don't know what happened to Greg Valentine, but he stopped. Tito Santana, there was no tops on the cages back in the old days. Tito Santana got up, climbed over the top instead of just jumping over Valentine, right? Got up, climbed over the top, was hanging on the cage, and as Valentine went to hit the floor, Santana dropped, and the Intercontinental Championship changed hands. Me and my buddies went absolutely nuts, Mark. Nuts. We couldn't believe it.
Is this the story you're going to tell on a first date? Is that what you're going to do?
I probably have told that story on a first date.
I saw, dude, I'll just tell you this real quick. I saw the night he died. Peacock had all this like best of Hogan stuff. So I saw some steel cage match, Hogan versus Andre the Giant. And this
was the cage blue?
Was it? It might have been.
Go ahead.
What I'm going to say is, this is like Andre the Giant, and he was not injured. It is amazing how quick and how mobile Andre the Giant was in his prime. It is scary. I can't even imagine how big he is in person. I know he passed away years ago. Like, I stood by Joel Embiid of the 76ers. I don't think people realize, like, Joel Embiid is like Andre the Giant. You're like, what the hell is this? So I could only imagine being ringside for Andre the Giant.
I've seen Andre in person. Huge guy. But listen, I will say this, though. With all this talk about Hogan, the best wrestling matches I ever went to were the Crockett Memorial Cups, were the tag team championships, those 2-day tournaments. Those were the best I've ever seen. Yeah, they just, you know, the WCW back then or whatever it was. They just didn't have the promoter. They just weren't as popular as WWE.
You know what it is? You know, it's like you talk about Hogan. He's not the best wrestler.
No,
he's not. It's kind of like Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth's not a fine tool player. It's not like he was Willie Mays, where he could, you know, steal bases, hit the ball, play center field. He's not, but it doesn't matter. It's what you said it so well. His impact. He's Mount Rushmore. He's the GOAT. All that. And do I agree with everything that happened late 90s, 2000? No. He never, you know what? He never should have became friends with Bubba the Love Sponge. That's the problem.
You think?
And I can't believe I'm going to say this. My mother rolls her eyes. I've been on Bubba the Love Sponge show. And, you know, I would talk to Bubba off the air.
Shame on you, Mark Moses.
Mind bog. Do you know there's once a segment? I did my show from the Trop in Tampa, and I told that this is like 2017. So I was friends with Gargiulo, the producer. He now does his own political show. So Gargiulo is a great guy. So I told him, I was just like joking with him. Yeah, I'm going to do it from there. Bubba's show went 30 minutes on me. How I'm at the Trop and Bubba's show's not. That's a true story, buddy.
I met him one time at the Stanley Cup Finals.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this. What did you say to Mr. Bubba?
Nothing. I was standing there, and he was outside doing his shit. He was under a tent doing his show. And I'm standing there, and I'm in a tie and a shirt, right? And he goes, "Oh, my God, you must be hot." Something like that, right? I just turn around, and I'm like, "Oh, my God, it's you."
His name is Zlotorzynski for Brevard Sports Network. That's a walk-off. That's how you end it right there.
Yeah.
Alan, thanks for your help and have a great day. All right.
Appreciate you, brother.